What's up everyone, Erik here and welcome to Hardware for Gamers. In this video, I'll be introducing my SFX case testing system. Now I will still be using my current ATX case testing systems for mid and full size tower cases. This SFX system will be used for testing ITX cases and cases that require an SFX power supply, like the ALTA G1M from SilverStone or the 011 Mini from Lian Li. And this is why I'm calling it the SFX case testing system. So if there are any ITX cases that you'd like me to take a look at, please leave them in the comments or post them in the HFG Discord server under video suggestions. And just to let you all know, members of the HFG Discord server do have access to all the charts from my reviews. So that's all the case tests, all the CPU cooler testing, all the case fan testing are all there on Discord. Now you do need to be a member to see them, but it is completely free to become a member. All you have to do is agree to the server rules. Now the SFX and the ATX systems are different. I'm not just switching out the power supply. They are completely different systems, so they won't be directly comparable, which I understand kind of sucks, but this is going to make it far easier on myself actually testing everything. I don't have to switch out CPUs or motherboards or anything like that. So it will give us much more consistent results. Now I will quickly go over the SFX system hardware and why I'm choosing this specific hardware. The CPU I'm using is the Ryzen 7 2700. I'm going with AM4 because I already had the CPU, so I don't want to spend more money. And I need to be able to control the frequency and voltage to have truly comparable results between these cases. So the 2700 will be running at 3.6 gigahertz with a V-core of 1.175. The SoC is then set at 0.9 volts. The load line calibrations are set to level 1. This is to minimize any voltage droop. The motherboard I went with is the MSI B450i Gaming Plus AC. I went with this motherboard because to test ITX cases, I need an ITX motherboard. And this was the best priced motherboard that I could find that would suit a 2000 series CPU. For RAM, I have two 4GB sticks of Corsair Vengeance. A test system mainly meant for temperature testing doesn't need super fast or a lot of RAM. The CPU cooler I'm going with is the Thermalright AXP90X53. This APX90 cooler performed really well in my testing when I reviewed it. It's also shorter than the AMD Wraith Spire cooler, so in those tight situations of some ITX cases, this will have better clearance. The thermal interface I'm going to be using is MX4. The GPU is the MSI RX 580 Armor X. I went with an older video card primarily because it doesn't have an auto frequency boost like the new cards do. So having consistent results will be much easier with this card. The power supply is the SilverStone SX700. I wanted a good, quiet, fully modular power supply, which the SX700 ticks all of these boxes. And SilverStone was kind enough to actually send me this unit, so thank you very much, SilverStone. The OS drive I'm using is an ADATA SU655. It's a 120 gigabyte drive. Now I understand that most everyone would actually go with an M.2 drive when they're doing an ITX build, but a lot of people, if not everyone, would also want a secondary drive, which is then why I'm going with the SSD, because I don't really need two drives in a test system, so I'm just going with the one SSD. I also wanted to point out that I will not be using cable extensions for the ITX cases. Just most ITX cases just won't be able to handle it, so I'm not even going to try doing it to some of them. Now for the testing itself, this will be much like my ATX case testing. I'll be running two temperature tests for each fan configuration, a loop of Unigine Heaven. This will be for testing game temperatures, and a render using Blender. This is then to test the CPU workload temperature. While these tests are running, I'll be using Hardware Info 64 to log the CPU and GPU temperatures and power usage every second. I'll also be taking room temperature readings using my digital thermometer. Once the CPU and or GPU reach a steady state in these tests, I'll take 5 minutes of data from each test. I run these tests twice and average all the temperatures together. So we'll have the average steady state temperature for over a 10-minute period. Also, if required, I'll adjust the CPU and GPU temperatures to reflect a 22 Celsius room temperature. Moving on to how I'll be testing the cases. For how many fan configurations I'll be testing for each of these cases will depend on the case. But I will be running the stock fan configuration at full speed, and I will be taking sound level recording readings from 50 centimeters or 20 inches away. So we will be able to compare all the cases by sound level. Now, if the stock fans have a dBA of more than 35, I'll be adjusting the fan speeds to suit a 35 dBA, and this will allow us to compare all the cases on a 35 dBA sound normalized chart. And these sound level readings will be of just the case fans. The CPU and GPU fans will be turned off for this testing. Now, all of this is assuming that the case actually has stock fans, because some ITX cases don't actually come with fans. Which then leads us into other fan configurations and the fans that I'll be adding to the cases. I'll be adding the Arctic P12 PWM PST fans. How many fans I'll be able to add will depend on the case. So this will be a very case-by-case basis on how all this works, because they're ITX cases. Not many of them are shaped the same. Which brings me to the next thing. I would like to do fan normalized testing, but normal and ITX don't really go together, so I don't think I'll be able to do this. For how the charts are going to be laid out, I'll be breaking this into different categories. I'll always start off with the case under review charts with all the fan configurations that I tested for that case. These charts should hopefully show us the best fan configuration for the case. Then I'll compare the case under review's stock fan configuration to all the other cases I've tested in both the CPU workload and gaming temperatures. I'll also have the dBA testing. Then we'll go over the noise equalized testing. So with all the cases noise equalized to 35 dBA, we'll go over the CPU workload testing and the game temperature testing. Now, the reason I like doing the noise equalized testing is because when noise equalizing everything to 35 dBA removes the idea of brute force. So it gives us a really good look of how well the airflow is within the case. Now, for some cases, they won't actually make it up to 35 dBA, but I will still show them on these charts. I'll just indicate what the actual dBA of the case was when running at full speed. Now, I haven't actually tested any cases with this system yet. So what I've gone and done is actually just shown the temperatures of the open air test bench. And I'll have these temperatures on the chart going forward, so we can look at what the ideal temperatures are in an open air environment relative to the cases. The first case that I'll be testing will be the ALTA G1M from SilverStone. I know this isn't an ITX case, but it does require an SFX power supply. So yeah, I'll also be picking up an NR200P in the next day or two, which is an ITX case. So that's the first two cases that I'll be taking a look at with this new test system. And again, if there are any ITX cases or cases that require an SFX power supply that you'd like me to test, please leave them in the comments or post them on the HFD Discord server. And that's all I have. So if you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're still watching, maybe hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you're notified whenever I drop a new video. And as always, thank you for watching and see you next time.